Hello, MCU fans. Today is going to be my breakdown and review of the new Madam Web movie. I'll be looking at things like Easter eggs, ties back to the comics, where it might fit in the overall Sony timeline, and I'll also talk about whether or not we may ever see any of these characters again. The main character, of course, is Cassie Web, aka Madam Web, and then we also meet 3 separate Spider-Women throughout the movie. So, there will be lots of spoilers, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have the February contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you might win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have the new membership option in case you want to help me with my goal of doing this full-time one day. You get lots of fun perks like custom emojis, behind-the-scenes videos, etc. But no matter how you support the channel, it's all greatly appreciated. Liking videos, leaving comments, subscribing, it all goes a long way. So thank you so much. Okay, so I mentioned the main character is Cassie Web, Madam Web, but we start the movie in 1973 where we meet Cassie's mom, who is in Peru. Or, as we learned from the trailer in that very memeable line, he was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died. Now, the funny thing is that line, which has obviously been the subject of some ridicule, does not even appear in the movie. Pieces of it do, and the idea of it does, but not that exact line. So very, very odd that it showed up in the trailer. But the he that she's referring to is Ezekiel Sims, who we see on the right. He is the bodyguard, and that's Cassie's mom. They're looking for spiders. So what on earth is she doing this for, right? Well, we don't actually learn until much later in the movie, but I'm just going to mention it now because it was so weird that she was so adamant to find these spiders, even though she's 9 months pregnant. You're like, what are you doing in Peru? 9 months pregnant. But these spiders, she believes, will help cure Cassie or save Cassie from a potentially fatal hereditary disease. So actually, it's very noble that she's there looking for these spiders, but it was even odder since we didn't know that until later. It was even odder when she wouldn't give up the spiders when Ezekiel Sims, our main bad guy, decides to go nuts. His team starts shooting everybody up. Ezekiel starts shooting everybody up ultimately and even forces Cassie's mom to give over the spider or he's going to shoot her and she won't give it up. And you're like, why are you so protective about this spider? And she's ultimately shot and at death's door. So you're watching this scene thinking, this is just foolhardy. But then when you later realize, no, she's doing it actually for Cassie, it's kind of nice. It's kind of neat. So anyway, it was a weird opening scene, I'll be honest. But it's not at its weirdest yet because these spider tribe people that they don't really explain, but they dress like Spider-Man, they rescue her and take her to this cave where, as you can see, she's 9 months pregnant, and they help her give birth. But before she gives birth, they have this spider bite her, the same spider she was trying to find. So presumably this spider is what will give Cassie, who's in the womb, the powers that she's later going to have, the precognitive powers. Unfortunately, it doesn't save Cassie's mom. And she does give birth successfully, gets a chance to see her baby before she passes away. So, yeah, it's really kind of sad. And since you didn't even understand why she was doing it, it was just a weird opening scene. But ultimately, yes, her mother passes away, but Cassie now presumably is saved from the hereditary disease and will eventually get her powers, which we then jump forward to 2003. So 30 years later, and to make it really clear, it's 2003. And we meet Cassie Web doing her job. Now, of course, she doesn't look anything like the comic book counterpart, Madam Web, because, Madam Web is really old. But this, again, is her origin. So it seemed like, and maybe still will, and we'll talk more about this later, it seems like they said it earlier so that when we see her again, she'll be older and more like in the comics. So that's why it's back in 2003. But there seem to be a couple other reasons why it's in 2003, and we'll talk about that. But so Cassie is a paramedic, and just some of these scenes were really shot weird. So she's rushing to this overturned car, right? And then she clips the seatbelt of this guy who's hanging upside down to save him. But you can't really tell that this is really dangerous for her until suddenly the car starts to go over the bridge. And you're like, well, wait, shouldn't they have thought of this beforehand? But no, it just falls into the water. So it's a very strange scene, but nonetheless, very important because crashing into the water, it shatters the windshield, into the form of a web, as you can see. And Cassie sees that as she's there under the water, and just her, seemingly this triggers her powers. And so you can see kind of like the web there in the water, and now it looks like the web is just holding the whole car. I think really these are more visions of what's going to happen with her. But she even, we see, looks like can astral project, which is pretty wild. I mean, I knew she had precognitive powers, which we saw Doctor Strange kind of use in Infinity War when he was looking at all those possible futures, but she can actually see the future. So it's even more precise than what Doctor Strange did. But just like Doctor Strange, she can also astral project, which we'll see come into play later in the movie. But one of the things she starts seeing is all the different things that are going to happen throughout the movie, including this giant S, which, yes, that is an S from a Pepsi sign. Pepsi is clearly a sponsor of this movie because they show up everywhere. But yeah, that will play a key part later in the movie. So then she is pulled out of the water and saved by her partner, Ben Parker. Yes, that is the Ben Parker, as in Uncle Ben, who, of course, is younger now and presumably in 30 years, or in 20 years down the road, because this is 2003 again. So if we're now to more present day in 2023, 2024, he would be a lot older. So, they really seem to be setting this up for something, right? Then they give us, though, some really lame jokes at Uncle Ben's expense. So as they're driving really quickly in the ambulance, he says, "I never thought I'd be this happy to be back in Queens." And yes, Cassie responds with, "What, you've never been shot in Queens?" Okay, we get it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Down the road, Uncle Ben is going to be shot. I don't even think it was even in Queens, but still, you get the joke, right? And you're going to see that's not the last one at poor Uncle Ben's expense. But we also meet a very pregnant Mary Parker. So Mary and Richard are the parents of, presumably, Peter Parker, right? And Richard is not even in the movie because he's overseas off doing something on a secret mission that Mary doesn't even know for sure where he is. Kind of like in the Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew's Spider-Man movies. They did the same thing with Richard and Mary. They were always gone. But anyway, so we meet Mary Parker, and she is at a wedding shower for her. She's very, very pregnant, and they're trying to guess the name of what they're going to have for the baby. And of course, we all know it's Peter, right? It's Peter. Just say it's Peter. No, they never get around to it. A balloon pops and makes it so they never answer the name, and you're like, okay, this is getting kind of silly. We get it. You're Mary Parker. You're Peter's mother, and that's Uncle Ben. Okay, we got it. But anyway, then we meet the rest of the cast, the 3 Spider-Women. And they all are tied to Cassie somehow. So Anya Corazon actually lives in her apartment. Anya Corazon will eventually, in the movie, very briefly, which we will talk more about that issue, but will very briefly be in her Spider-Woman costume, which you see there. And this is what she looks like in the comics. And when we see her full costume, it's pretty comic accurate. Not so much the eyes there, but the costume overall really is. Then we meet Julia Carpenter. And she runs across Cassie in the emergency room when Cassie helps save some of her family. And so Julia Carpenter, that's what she looks like in her costume. I really liked her costume. I thought it was pretty good. And of course, that's what it looks like in the comics. She was the Spider-Woman that I liked the most, personally. But anyway, she looks really good. And then we also meet the last of the 3, Maddie Franklin. And of course, Maddie, you might have seen from the trailers, almost gets hit by the ambulance. She's on her skateboard there. And also notice the students. We'll talk a little bit more about them when we talk about timeline placement, but you can see her friends are in between her and the ambulance there. And Maddie gives her a really nasty look and later gives her the finger for almost getting hit. And you're like, but you were riding a skateboard directly at an ambulance. I just don't know why she was mad. But anyway, nonetheless, this is what she'll look like in her costume. And this is her Spider-Woman from the comics. So they do a pretty good job of making comic-accurate costumes, and I thought they all looked really good. The issue is we just barely see them in costume. But again, more of that later. And we meet Ezekiel Sims. And remember, he was the bodyguard that shot up everybody, including Cassie's mom. And here he is now 30 years later. So in the comics, he looks like that, which does not look like what he looks like throughout most of the movie, although we'll see that he becomes a little more comic accurate in a second here. In fact, right now. So he has a future vision. Remember, he took the spider, the same spider that bit Cassie's mom and gave Cassie her precognitive powers. He apparently has done it as well because he has precognitive powers. It's because he sees the future, which that's him on the left waking up from a dream and him on the right in the future. And notice he's got the gray hair, looks a little more comic book-like there. But what is his vision? Well, he sees those 3 spider women killing him. So this is Julia Carpenter's Web, and there you see her there in costume, and there's Anya, and there's Maddie. And then Maddie, a really cool scene there where she's got him against the wall, and for reasons they do not explain, they definitely want him dead. They chuck him out the window, he falls to his death, and they stand there looking down on him. So this was one of the biggest issues I had with the movie. Then there's a laundry list of issues I have with the movie, but this is one of the biggest ones. We have no idea why they killed him. We have no clue. I mean, you get the idea he's a bad dude, right? He shot Cassie's mom just for the spider. He's arrogant throughout the whole movie. He does some other awful things in the movie. But why are they particularly killing him? We don't even know. Okay, whatever. And then also, while we do see them in full costume here, I'm telling you, this is all of the 15 seconds in the whole movie that they're in costume, which, again, we will definitely talk more about that later. But anyway, so Ezekiel, and I can't blame him here, he wants to figure out who are these people that kill me in my dreams. So he probes his mind to get the best image possible, puts it in the computer, and uses it to, demask them and figure out who they actually are. Again, when I talk about issues I have with the movie, this is 2003 technology. And I think it's NSA technology that he steals, if I recall. But regardless, did we have the tech to do this in 2003? Maybe. I mean, it's government stuff, right? And government doesn't tell us anything. So maybe this was out there, but it just seemed a little advanced to me. But anyway, so he is now going to be hunting down the 3 girls. Who are the 3 girls we've already met, right? So at the same time, Cassie is beginning to get her premonitions, because one example is she is telling her boss, hey, I'm really worried. Something bad's going to happen. I'm just really worried for you. Doesn't give him enough to be confident that he shouldn't get in the van. You would think she would have told him, okay, seriously, you're going to get killed, because sure enough, he does get killed. So, it was just kind of weird a little bit. Like I would have at least been like, okay, you seem very concerned. I'm going to not get in the van. But he does, and this is how she's really realizing, I'm able to see the future. This is really freaky. So we move to a scene on a train, which I thought this was pretty well done. First, there's a fun little Easter egg. It's really hard to see. I couldn't find a frame where you could really read it, but trust me, that says Daily Bugle. So, they're giving us the more winks and the nods to the overall Spider-Man universe, so that's great. But on this train, all 3 girls end up coming in. So there's Cassie sitting on the train, and we start to see each of them walking in one at a time. But we also see Ezekiel coming in. And so I thought this is kind of funny. I mean, I'm guessing they had him go barefoot for a couple reasons. One, maybe that's how he can stick to things, because we're going to see that not only does he have precognitive powers, but he has many of Spider-Man's abilities. Not really the spider sense, but just about everything else. But I also think they had him barefoot because now he's looking more and more like the comics, right? Because the comics, he's nutty in the comics. But even that outfit looks really similar. The blue shirt and the darker dark blue / black suit. So anyway, very interesting. But now comes a theme in the movie, which is anybody that's female that he gets his hands on, he's going to strangle them. So strangle number 1, strangle number 2, and strangle number 3. So I don't know if the writer of this movie just had some issues he was working through. I don't know what's going on, but it just becomes uncomfortable. I mean, even just this scene was uncomfortable for him to do it to all 3 of them, but he's not done. Anyway, all right, so one of the strange things is when he's in his spider suit, only Madam Web can see it? I don't know. In the comments, if you've seen the movie, tell me if you fully understood what was going on with this. But I guarantee you, nobody else sees him in this Spider-Man suit. Only Cassie, and maybe the girls, but certainly only Cassie. So I never really understood it. Cool costume, though, I guess. I mean, they made it as Spider-Man-like as they could without getting in any licensing issues, because it seems like they cannot put Spider-Man in these movies. So, so bizarre. But anyway, they escape the train, and then he starts attacking these cops. So maybe the cops couldn't even see him. They didn't even know what was happening. But notice, he punches this male cop, and what do you think he does to the female cop? Oh, that's right, he strangles her. I don't know. I don't know. What's going on here? I mean, it got to the point where you're just uncomfortable with what you were seeing. But anyway, so they get away. Cassie and the three girls get away, and she starts to tell them, hey, I think I'm seeing the future. I think there's issues going on here. Just stay here, stay put. I will come back for you later. Now, you're really going to think three teenage girls are going to sit in the woods while Cassie takes off. No, they're not. But nonetheless, she trusts that they will, and she goes home and starts now really researching what it was that happened, when her mom was in the Amazon researching spiders, that whole thing. And there's, of course, again, Ezekiel. She learns from the notes about the spider and learns a little bit more about what was going on. Is kind of realizing I may need to dig into this further, which we will see. But she then starts to see, what powers does she have? What did I gain from this spider? And I did think this was kind of clever. She says to herself, how would I know whether I can climb a wall unless I try? So she comically tries to climb the wall and completely slides down in a pile. That was funny. I mean, there is some very awkward dialogue in this movie. I mean, extremely awkward dialogue. But also there's some stuff that's genuinely funny. And Cassie brings a lot of that humor. It kind of reminded me of Shazam in the first Shazam movie where he was testing his powers. He didn't know. What does he have? What doesn't he have? So she does a little bit of that. But anyway, when she goes back to find the girls, what a shock. They're gone. I mean, they're teenagers. Come on. So they decided to go and get something to eat. But they're not just eating. They're dancing and acting crazy on the table. But then in walks Ezekiel. So, yeah, not good. And again, he's in the suit, which I don't think anybody else can see other than them. But in walks Cassie. She finds them, figures out where they are. She's trying to protect them. And no big surprise. He does again, she's the only one that can see him. So then we're going back and forth here between him in the costume and not. So I'm wondering if now everybody else can see him in the diner. I don't know. But anyway, he's explaining to Cassie, hey, these girls aren't what you think. They're dangerous. There's a problem here. I need to take them. Cassie does not accept that, obviously, and still wants to protect them. So naturally, what does he do? Well, he strangles them. Literally, somebody writing this had some real issues. That's the bottom line. Somebody call a therapist because the writer needs help. Anyway, so I did think this scene was pretty cool. There are some very well shot scenes. So notice, Ezekiel is on the floor, grabs Cassie, and then he jumps and he flips, and the camera flips at the same time. If you can follow that, it flips around, and then he's on the ceiling, and then he chucks Cassie. So yeah, I mean, look at that. That's pretty cool. Nope. So well shot, very well shot scene. Okay, so Cassie then grabs a knife, but you got to be careful because any weapon you have can be used against you. Ezekiel stabs her with it, and then that's when she wakes up from her vision. So none of this happened. This was all a vision that Cassie saw, and Cassie has that line from the trailer where she says, let's try that again. So this time she's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to fight this guy. I'm going to use my taxi cab, and I'm going to throttle him against a wall. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But this does kind of bring up another of the big issues I had with the movie, which is they're basically fighting Spider-Man. Now, he doesn't have the webbing because he didn't build web shooters, and he doesn't have the Spidey sense, even though he does have the precognition. But otherwise, he has Spider-Man powers. And they're basically 4 normal humans. So there's only so much you can do with this, right? I mean, they cannot fight him directly in hand-to-hand combat or they're dead, as we keep seeing in the visions, right? So they have to keep coming up with ways to either ram him into a wall or sneak off the train or whatever. It's a weird movie because they do not want to have a superhero until the very end. Now, yes, Madam Web has the precognitive powers, but I don't really consider that something you could use to fight legit a Spider-Man. So we're going to see this problem kind of continue to escalate through the movie. But, so Cassie then hands over the kids, the teenagers, since they clearly need supervision, gives them to poor Uncle Ben, Ben Parker, and she takes off to Peru. So she's literally gone for a week. Somehow she finds the exact location, probably tracing her mother's notes, finds the cave, remember, where her mother died, but Cassie got those spider powers, and she's looking around, and then now the not quite as creepy spider tribe people come and talk to her, and I kid you not, they literally say, instead of with great power comes great responsibility, they say, when you take on the responsibility, great power will come. I mean, I just kind of groaned. I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? I mean, they wanted over and over and over to say, hey, Spider-Man, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what? I have a better idea than wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Give us Spider-Man in your movie. That might be better than all of this. But anyway, so she learns a little bit more about what's going on, learns how to use her powers a little better, and heads back home again to find out that Mary Parker has her water's broken. And they have some uncomfortable jokes about that, but I'm just going to let all that go. And they get into the ambulance to take her to the hospital. Because of that, now Ezekiel's able to find the girls again. Remember, he's using that NSA, those cameras. So he knows what they look like now, definitely, because he's met them. But he uses the cameras, the NSA technology, to tap into cameras all around the city and find the facial recognition. And sure enough, finds the girls again. But luckily, Cassie's back, steals an ambulance. Pretty cool scene. I would say this was one of my favorite scenes of the movie throughout this whole chase here. Then Ezekiel comes jumping down, I love this, and gives us a little strikes a pose next to the Calvin Klein ad. Nice, very nice. But Cassie then comes, keep in mind what that dude looks like in the underwear there. And then Cassie comes breaking through the sign. You can see the dude still standing there, and flies out and hits Ezekiel. So once again, the only way we can stop Ezekiel, since they're all just normal humans, is to ram into him with vehicles. So it does just start to get a little old. But this scene I thought was really cool. Then he's chasing them, they're ahead in the ambulance, and he's just hopping from car to car until finally he lands on the ambulance. But this is cool because Cassie sees him coming and is telling the girls, hold on, wait, and he lands on the top, wait, now. And they do the shockers, that you use to revive somebody right on the roof, right where he is, and shock him off the top. That was pretty cool. So again, this movie had sequences which were enjoyable, for sure. But at the end of the day, you're still just like, we're watching four normal people just get lucky. How many times can you get lucky against basically Spider-Man? They're fighting Spider-Man. So anyway, then we move to the final scene, which is in the abandoned fireworks warehouse, right? Isn't that where every big fight scene ends? The firework warehouse. So Cassie lights off a bunch, or throws a bunch of torches into the fireworks, and that's why we're seeing these explosions here. I guess with her precognitive power, she knew which ones to throw into and knew how to dodge the fireworks. It starts to get a little questionable, but nonetheless, they then head to the roof so they can get away because the helicopter has come to save them, which is great, right? Well, it's sort of great, except the fireworks explode the helicopter. So you're like, oh man, poor helicopter dude was just coming to help. And now because the girls, well, particularly Cassie, said to light off the fireworks, now the dude's exploded. So, okay, well, there you go. Then, I had seen this in the trailer where Cassie just kind of grabs this pretty big, I would presume, heavy chunk of metal to protect the girls from the fireworks. So I assumed at this point she had superpowers, right? No, she does not. She just, I guess she's a boss, right? Could pick that thing. I don't think I could pick it up and hurl it or hold it like that. But nonetheless, fireworks are going off everywhere. And yes, we do finally see that she does have this astral projection, because what's going on here, I'm sorry about the potato quality. One of the reasons I just, it's so frustrating to try to do these breakdowns, because you have to search the internet for these potato quality pictures of the things that aren't in the trailers. But nonetheless, you get the idea here. She's astral projecting and she's saving each of the three girls because they were all in danger because of all the explosions. So did she not see the fact that this was a bad idea to set off the fireworks? I don't know. Anyway, ultimately, as we kind of guessed was going to happen, one of the letters, in this case the P, falls off and ultimately smushes Ezekiel. So yeah, he's dead. We don't have to worry about him anymore. But Cassie ultimately is blinded and paralyzed by the fireworks going off, and also by the giant S that she saw falling. So yeah, we now basically get her to the Madam Web we are used to in the comics, blind and paralyzed. So one thing they need to wrap up is Mary Parker needs to have that baby, right? So yes, now we have a Peter Parker born in 2003, which, in present day, let's say 2024, he'd be 21. So where are they going with this then? Are they trying to say this is Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Because that would be about his age in 2024. 2025 timeframe, there's no way Feige is going to let this be Tom Holland. So I had heard rumors that they had tried to make it Andrew, which I think they should have done, by the way, because I would love to see Andrew Garfield showing up in these Sony films. Then I would love him. Then I would go to the movies and be happy and proud. As it stands, I was kind of like shaking my head. But anyway, nope, it doesn't work timeline for Andrew. It obviously doesn't work for Toby. So I don't know where they were going with this. Let me know what you think. It's crazy. Anyway, hey, let's have one more joke, though, at the expense of poor Ben Parker, because as he looks down at his the nephew, he says, all the fun and none of the responsibility. And legit, Cassie says, that's what he thinks. Like, oh, man. Really? Now, with your precognitive ability, you know he dies and you're making fun of that? Now, maybe that what she's really talking about or seeing in her mind is that Richard and Mary are going to die and he's going to end up having to be, take care of Peter. But then again, Richard and Mary die and you're not saying anything? I mean, it was a really weird way to end the movie and to throw shade at poor Ben once again. Leave Uncle Ben alone. Anyway, so then we finally end with the new and improved Madam Web. Well, sort of. This is her in present day with those. Who chose those glasses? That's all I want to know. Somebody should be fired because those are not flattering glasses. But nonetheless, she's now paralyzed, but still using her ability to see the future. And in particular, now we see a glimpse into a couple years down the road. I don't know, probably not too many years down the road. Now this is what she'll look like in her superhero form, I guess. And she's standing by the three girls who are now also superheroes. So you walk out of the movie basically saying to yourself, well, this is the movie I thought I was going to see. I thought I was going to see the origin of at least Madam Web, and then she would actually be in her costume, as well as the Spider Women. But no, they're literally in costume in maybe 3 scenes for 15 seconds. I guess I've never seen a superhero movie where the superhero doesn't, in the third act, become the actual superhero and get into a big fight. Instead, they're still just humans running through a firework factory, blowing stuff up, killing the poor helicopter guy, almost dying themselves, paralyzing Madam Web, and then in the future, down the road, we may get to see all of them. I'll be honest, I would not have an issue with seeing any of them again. They were great if Sony's actually going to make a good movie next time. But I have no idea why they made this movie. No idea. No idea if they were trying to make it about Peter Parker or just trying to wink and nod at us about that. I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments. Whether you saw the movie or whether you're just seeing this review of it or maybe even other people's reviews. What do you think was their goal? But anyway, at least at the end of the movie, we have Madam Web and 3 Spider Women. So how did the movie do? Well, that's not good, right? That's the Rotten Tomatoes and the Cinema Score. And then just for comparison, here is Morbius. Same Cinema Score, a little bit better audience score, just basically the same critic score. I'll tell you my opinion. I actually thought Madam Web was a little better than Morbius, which I know I kind of hammered Madam Web, but I did not like Morbius at all. At least Madam Web had a couple scenes I enjoyed, and while it had some bad dialogue and maybe should have been a different story, the story at least made sense. Morbius, on the other hand, gave us this. I will never let this go, ever, to my dying day. So, no, I'm sorry. Nothing in Madam Web was this bad. This was so bad because the dialogue was bad, the acting was bad, and it made no sense. There is nothing that bad in Madam Web, in my opinion. But tell me what you think. Which do you think was worse, Madam Web or Morbius? And if you haven't seen Madam Web, that's fine. You can do it based on this review and based on your knowledge. But which do you think was worse? All right, so let's talk about how I think Marvel might have tried to divert attention a bit. Isn't it interesting how we got Deadpool in the Super Bowl, then the Fantastic Four announcement, and then the X-Men 97 trailer? It's been a crazy week. I've been having trouble keeping up with all this, trying to do videos for all of this. So I think Marvel had a feeling this was not going to do well. And by Marvel, I mean like Disney Marvel, not Sony Marvel. Well, actually, Sony may have thought this is also going to do poorly. And here's the problem. Most people don't distinguish between Disney Marvel and Sony Marvel. To them, Madam Web is Marvel, and Marvel had another flop. And this also hurts the superhero genre in general. So I really appreciate that Disney is trying to cleanse our palate and make us forget Madam Web and think about all these exciting things, because these were 3 very exciting announcements. Okay, so when does this movie take place? Well, 2003, they make that crystal clear. It is 2003. But when in 2003? Well, you can see the trees there. This certainly looks like, I would say, spring, early summer. So, okay, that's helpful. Trees again, notice the trees, looks like spring, early summer. Also, we see the students. I mentioned earlier, we were going to talk about them again. They're all in school uniforms, so definitely school is still in session. I don't think we could be talking fall because the trees seem like they wouldn't be quite so green. So, based on these school outfits, that kind of puts us in, no later than June, maybe May. Okay. They're barbecuing. Yeah, you can barbecue about any time, but again, look at that tree, very, very green tree. So feels like, again, we're talking spring. They make a reference in 2003 to Martha Stewart and all of her problems that she was going through, but that doesn't really help because they don't tell us where in the process they're referring to. Like, are they just saying they're sorry that she was arrested or sorry she was on trial? So interesting reference to help us place 2003, but doesn't really help us place the month. I think the biggest help, though, is Britney Spears' Toxic is in the movie. It's a great song and really well used in the movie when they're dancing at the bar. And then Beyonce's Dangerously in Love is advertised on a mural. So that came out in June of 2003. So to have it still be when school is in session, but also have them advertising her album, and Toxic also came out in 2003, really feels like a June timeframe. So let me know what you think, but that's the best I can come up with. So if we look at our Sony Spider-Man timeline, which of course has Toby across the top, then Andrew, then the Spider-Verse, and then the Sony SSU, I don't know where to put Madam Web. June 2003, I know that much, but I don't know which to connect her with because she doesn't really connect with any of them other than, like I mentioned earlier, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is the closest where it works mathematically, but ain't no way she's in the MCU. So I don't know. It's gonna be disconnected over there for now. So I have a Google Drive and all of the timeline docs are out there. I did update the spreadsheet as well as this image is out there in case you want to download those. I will put a pinned comment so you can get to those. But let me know what you think about the June 2003, whether she connects to something, and honestly, whether we're going to see any of them again. My guess is, as poorly as this movie is probably going to do, we unfortunately won't see them again. I would have loved a Spider-Woman movie. That had been awesome. Would have been awesome. But who knows? Who knows? And they're all stuck in 2003, so they can't even appear in present day. It's painful. It's painful. Disappointing movie. I will just say, very disappointing movie. All right, don't forget, February contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment. You might win a book or a steelbook. And of course, we have the membership option in case you're interested in that. And then, as I mention every time, we have the Discord. 1,300 members on the Discord, having so much fun. Global, so there are people from someone is on the server 24/7. So we have, we're doing rewatches, we have the Comic Club, we have MMORPG, you can see the schedule there for that. We have retrospectives, server awards, an iceberg, because the server's been around for a year now, and we're just doing kind of the history of it and people's fun memories. Yes, you can actually get a custom role if you went to go see Madam Web. So if you're willing to admit it, then yes, you can get a custom role. It's pretty cool. And then we have some new threads. So we do talk about more than just Star Wars, DC, and Marvel. Those are the main 3, but we have this other media where we can talk about anything you want and lots of conversations there. So I will leave a pinned comment with an invite to the Discord. Awesome to have you join us. And it's very easy to get in and get verified. So also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.